Have our leaders forgotten what the purpose of our military, what it's all about? General Keith Kellogg says yes. He is the co-chair for the Center for American Security and the author of the forthcoming book, which you can pre-order now, War by Other Means, a General in the Trump White House. It's out October 12th. General Kellogg, appreciate your time with us today, sir. Thank you for being here.
Dana, thanks for having me.
Of course. I know, General, that a lot of people are trying to ascertain where the bulk of the blame goes for this Afghanistan process or disaster, rather. But I would say, really, ultimately, anybody who ever went into the country thinking that they were going to unite a bunch of ragtag warlords who are only loosely knitted together by Islamic faith into something that resembles our republic with a democratic process, I think anybody who ever approached Afghanistan like that probably bears the blame. Your thoughts on all of that before we dive deeper?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Look, I think when you look at this 20-year effort we've had, I think the first 2 years were righteous. We went in there for a good reason. We went after Osama bin Laden. We went after Al Qaeda. KSM now sits in a jail cell in Guantanamo Bay. Who was the mastermind behind 9/11? We got bin Laden in Pakistan. But then the next 18 years turned into something we shouldn't have been doing, I believe, which is nation building. I mean, this goes back to something we didn't learn. Alexander the Great didn't learn it in 327 BC. Afghanistan's not a homogeneous country. I mean, when they talk about Germany, Germans are Germans, East Germans are West Germans. When you look at the Koreas, North Korean, South Korean, they're homogeneous. Here it's all tribal. And you look and say that this is not what we would call a real country. And we went in there trying to make it to look like the United States of America. We were trying to make these Afghans Jeffersonian Democrats, and it never works. And I thought the military lost its way. The military is formed, and should be formed, the American military, is to deter. When deterrence fails, you fight and win on the battlefield going forward. And this is nothing about our young men and women in uniform. They are great, and they have served incredibly well. And we should never discount the services that they performed in Afghanistan. And my question is, at the senior leadership level, I think that's where they were failed, and then it became habit. Everybody kind of built on previous general before this general before this general, and we just had to stay there. And it was a huge mistake. It was the treasure we have lost, the people we have lost, and the biggest thing, Dana, my biggest concern, it didn't allow us to intellectually pivot to an emergent threat, which was China. I mean, they're now growing. They've got weapon systems that we don't have, and it was all because we were so fixated on the Middle East.
Yeah, we're talking with General Keith Kellogg. General, what do you make of the president, and not just the president, but really all of his surrogates across the board, saying that this kind of chaos was unavoidable? It seems like it was avoidable, and that's sort of what he was advised against, making some of the actions that he took.
Yeah, it was not only it was absolutely predictable, and it was avoidable. Because I won't get into it down to the nickels and the dimes, but we came up with a plan. I spent 1,461 days in the White House. We came up with a very executable plan on disengagement from Afghanistan, and that included a plan we put together that had gates or conditions to it. And the last condition that we had were intra-Afghan talks between the Taliban and between the Ghani government to have a government put in place that was a reconciliation government. We would have 2,500 U.S. troops there, 5,000 Allied troops there, and the paramilitary from the CIA going forward, and then the air power that was there to ensure that would work, and then eventually we would disengage from that. So it gave us a breathing spell. And then the president reinforced that by picking up the phone and calling all the principals involved with it. He actually talked to Mullah Baradar, who was the chief Taliban negotiator, and told him, don't mess with the United States of America. We know where you live. And he made that call 1 month after we got sold it. So he knew what was going to be expected of him, the Taliban, and going forward. But I think we lost that. So there, it was avoidable. What they have done now is it's almost like that. You look at it and you go, how did you get to that situation? How could you possibly have made those decisions going forward? And that's my big concern. Why would you give your major air base in Bagram before you totally disengaged from the country? Why didn't you get your citizens out before you did that? And then when it started to fail, why didn't you stop the process and say, reconsider, what's happening. We need to step back and reconsider what we're doing, solidify the situation, and then continue the process as needed going forward.
Yeah. So, General, what is the way out of this? Because I know the Taliban has said there's an August 31st deadline. I don't see that happening, but I don't see that Biden has much leverage here.
Well, there's a term in the military that when you're decisively engaged, you've lost your freedom of maneuver. We're kind of decisively engaged right now. And what he needs to do, he needs to realize what he's got in the situation on hand, which is not good. And then he has to say, okay, what am I going to do? And I don't know what his advisor is saying, but this is what I would advise if I was in the White House and I was still with President Trump. And we were in this situation. By the way, I don't think we would have been in this situation. But this is when he picks up the phone, he, the president, the commander-in-chief, and picks up the phone, and we've got their phone numbers, and he calls the Taliban and said, we're not going to do it on the 31st of August. We're going to do it when we get all of our people out, when we get the people out that have supported us going forward, and don't interfere with what we're doing. If you do interfere with what we're doing, we are going to come back at you. And we're not going to have 1,000 troops on the ground or 5,000 troops on the ground. You're going to see 20,000 troops on the ground, and we're going to push you out of Kabul until we're right about this. And they will back off from there because they appreciate strength. And we don't have that right now. And I'm a big believer in patterns. And what I mean by patterns is how things work and how they look in the past and the present into the future. And this president set a really bad pattern. You saw what happened in the border, where he's just kind of ignored it and hoped it'd go away. And then you look at what I'm seeing right now in Afghanistan, and he's like, well, I hope this just goes away. Well, it's not. It's an international issue. He's got combat forces on the ground facing another combat element, and he has to make some hard decisions, and he needs to be personally engaged, and he's not. He's letting everybody else do it. He's letting Tony Blinken do it. He's letting Jake Sullivan do it. He's letting Lloyd Austin do it, and Mark Milley doing it. This is a time when he is the commander-in-chief. He needs to get involved.